Are you wanting to grow some early spring flowers and you're wondering what you can start in January? Well, we've got some answers to some questions on my previous video. In January, I start snapdragons and poppies because that works for me in my climate. I'm currently gardening in Northeast Texas in Zone 8B, but more importantly, you need to know your last frost date. And for me, this year is March 27th. Even knowing your zone is similar to mine is helpful. Your frost date is more helpful because Zone 8B can go all the way around the United States along the coastline as well as up into the south like myself. But the last frost dates in those zones can vary pretty widely. So I pulled up my notes from last year and I started my snapdragons on January 15th last year, and I put them in the ground on March the 12th last year, right before my last frost date. So they grew roughly about 8 to 9 weeks before I put them in the ground. So if you know your last frost date, you can count back about 8 to 9 weeks from your last frost date, and that'll give you the idea of what I did. You can look up your last frost date on the Old Farmer's Almanac website by just putting in your zip code. I also had questions about where I get my seeds because I will be starting these in about 10 days now, and some of you still have some time to get some seeds started if you want to grow along with me. For my tall snapdragons that are used for cut flowers, my preferred source is Johnny's Select Seeds. You can buy these in large packs or small packs. I usually buy the 50 seed packs because that is sufficient for me growing in my small cutting garden for my personal use and sharing with friends. I think last year I grew like 25 of each color, and so I should have enough of most of my colors to grow again a second year. You have to replenish a couple that were on their second year. I've got to order more of my Potomac Orange and more of my Potomac Lavender. There are different types of snapdragons that grow. Some bloom earlier and some bloom later. We do have a little bit warmer spring, so the ones that bloom later are probably actually better for us even starting early because they are a little more heat tolerant than some of the earlier varieties. These are still a cool flower and they will not like excessive heat. And here by June, we're getting into the upper 90s and they don't like that anymore. So that is why I start these in January. I plant them in March, and then I will get my blooms usually from April to May and into early June. We also talked about poppies, and I followed the same exact schedule. I did get these from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. So I had a lot of questions if you could direct sow these or not. You can, but in our climate, I would not advise it. And this time of year especially, if you're going to direct sow these in our climate, you should have done that in the fall. Even though snapdragons are light frost hardy, they need to be well established and rooted and have some little bit of size on them before that first frost. Those are usually over winter, but you do sometimes have to cover those if you fall sow, if you have a hard freeze, and then they will just kind of slowly grow until spring. But I found in my climate, I can start them in January and put them out in March and they bloom just fine. It's less work on me. I don't have to cover them if I'm having a hard freeze. They are not going to be a full summer flower for us here in our climate, so I'm basically planting these just to have them in the spring. So I'll make another video on my setup on how I start seeds. I have a real simple setup that works just fine that anybody can use. I'll link a few clips here with the stages of these month by month before I planted them out last year. So if you want to grow some snapdragons in a southern climate, get them ordered. I'm going to start mine in about 10 days to 2 weeks.